I'm Lougallagher.
I'm Corvette.ronnie.
If it's good enough for Cheech and Chong, sure hell good enough for me. Welcome to another episode of Men Are So Smart. 2 U.S. studies on the effects of marijuana on drivers in states where it is allowed for recreational use came to different conclusions about whether it increases risks behind the wheel.
A study by the American Journal of Public Health published on Thursday looked at motor vehicle fatalities and found no significant increase in Colorado and Washington state where recreational marijuana use is legal compared with 8 states where it is not legal that have similar populations, vehicle ownership, and traffic laws. Alabama, Kentucky, and Texas were among the states in the comparison group.
Now, the study focused on deaths and actually found what was expected to happen. Back in 2012, some argued that people would ride around in their cars, crash, and die. The study proved that just isn't true.
In another study published on Wednesday, the Highway Loss Data Institute analyzed the frequency of car insurance collision claims in Washington, Colorado, and Oregon, where recreational marijuana is also permitted. It found a 3% increase in collision claims in those states compared with Wyoming, Idaho, and Nevada, where it's not legal.
I thought it was legal in Nevada now. I think it is.
You know what? It might be.
In states that passed legislation approving the recreational use of marijuana, the data showed that there was a strong indicator that marijuana was indeed a factor in considering the rise of claims, says a senior vice president for the Highway Loss Data Institute in a telephone interview.
Also, Mason DeVert, the communication director of Washington, D.C. based Marijuana Policy Project, a pro-legalization group, questioned the methodology of the Institute's study. There's no clear evidence that marijuana is a factor. It's going to take several years and studies before we can determine that, he said at a telephone interview.
The Institute defends its approach, saying, "We looked at the correlation of states with similar insurance claim frequencies, and the states we chose had the highest correlation."
Right now, still federal law prohibits the use of recreational use of marijuana, at least in the country. However, it's been approved by 8 states, including Maine, Massachusetts, Colorado, Washington, Alaska, Oregon, California, Nevada, there it is, and District of Columbia.
Okay, so at the time of recording this, I guess it has not completely gone into effect in Nevada. All right, so the world is changing. As a person who grew up in the 60s and remembers the Summer of Love and Woodstock, marijuana is being looked at differently now, although it's still classified federally on the list of banned drugs. These states, the people have spoken. And my question for you, Ron, as a guy that represents the law, did you ever think that you would see this happen with these laws coming into effect and having to test people while driving under the influence of marijuana?
You know what? When this law was first being, when it was on up for vote, I thought there was just no way in hell that anybody, that it would be approved.
Why?
I just thought that the population is obviously getting older and a little bit less tolerant of that. In law enforcement, honestly, if it's not a law that you can enforce, then get over it. To be quite honest, marijuana use was nothing that we vigorously enforced anyway, unless it was pretty large quantities. If somebody had a personal use, like one marijuana cigarette, for the most part, you're probably going to take it out and you're not going to take somebody to jail over one marijuana cigarette.
Are you going to destroy it?
Yeah, if I'm going to be totally honest, yeah, the way to do it correctly, obviously, it has to be booked. But if you're not going to write the person a citation for it, then it doesn't have to be booked, but it does have to be destroyed. So if you can, have them smash it into the blacktop.
You have them do it?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, it's just it's the same reason cops have you pour the beer out when they catch you with beer. It's a psychological scar that we like to leave with people. So it's kind of the same token. If you smash your own marijuana cigarette that cost you a couple bucks, maybe you'll think twice before you do it again.
I doubt it.
But here's what I found, though, in pulling people over, and not for any type of erratic driving, but for speeding or for some kind of an equipment violation. I pull people over, they roll the window down, and it smells like, Fast Times at Ridgemont High in the car. Obviously, there's been some marijuana consumed recently, but I wasn't able to tell that just being behind them. Their driving was no different than anybody else on the road.
Okay, that's the point I want to get to. That's what we're considering here. Yeah, it's fun to go to a concert. You're going to see a little Steely Dan. Fire one up or two before the show and go watch the show and enjoy it. But that was yesteryear. And now we're trying to find out whether or not marijuana has an influence the way alcohol does on your performance behind the wheel. So where do we stand with the new breathalyzers, if you will, Ron?
So there is no 100% test that we can tell if you're under the influence of marijuana. And I'm here to tell you that I can tell in a heartbeat when somebody has been drinking and driving. I can tell in a heartbeat when somebody is on their phone and driving. But when somebody is under the influence of marijuana, I can't tell the difference. And maybe there are people out there that are more trained in traffic than I am that can differentiate that, but I don't think so.
Okay, so what you're saying is, if when you pull a car over, you don't smell it, you're not going to necessarily be able to tell whether that person's under the influence or not.
No.
Now, what would give you reason to test?
If they did have some type of let's say they're bouncing off their lanes, or they're weaving within their lane,
All right.
or they're driving down the road with their right turn signal on.
Mm-hmm. No headlights.
No headlights. A lot of little cues, because driving takes multiple motor skills all at the same time. You have to keep your speed steady, stay within your lane, be aware of traffic around you. You cannot do that if you're on your phone or if you're under the influence of alcohol.
Then why are we spending money to try to develop a device that can tell whether the person has had marijuana or not?
Well, and I think it's going to take a couple years, as this study was saying, before we even know if it's a big deal or not. Honestly, when cell phones first came out and people were talking on their cell phones and driving, nobody thought it was a big deal. All of a sudden, you can notice a very dramatic spike in the amount of accidents that occur when people are on their cell phone, either talking or texting. And the knee-jerk reaction is we have to set up some legislation immediately to make it illegal.
Operative word being knee-jerk.
Yes, very, very knee-jerk. It's something that has to be done. It's like, what just happened here? There's a spike, and it's, in fact, cell phone accidents far, far outweigh alcohol-related accidents. And, I mean, it makes sense if you think about it. Everybody you know has a cell phone. Not everybody you know drinks and drives. But people will have their cell phone at least in their car with them, so the opportunity to talk on your cell phone or text in your car is there. Not everybody carries beer with them when they drive, and so the opportunity is not the same.
Okay, so here's what I see. As a kid who grew up in the 60s, There was a time when there was not even a law about seatbelts. In fact, there was a time when cars didn't even have seatbelts.
Yep.
And finally we came of age and we decided that we need to enforce these laws. The way that I interpret this happening is you target the younger demographic. That's what you go after. Because, and what I'm talking about is kids that are 6 to 10 or 11 years old. You make it a law so that the parents have to enforce it with their kids, and those kids growing up knowing that law, so that when they become drivers at 16 or 18 or whatever the case may be, they're already used to wearing a seatbelt. Is this the same sort of thing?
I mean, I think, yeah, it's
with cell phones?
Hopefully. And you know, there's an app now that shuts your cell phone off when you're going over 15 miles an hour. So maybe in the future that will just be a part of every cell phone that you will not be able to override. Right now it's an app that you have to consciously start yourself, which takes some discipline. But at some point, because I remember when you could drive without seatbelts on.
Yeah.
I rode a motorcycle when you didn't have to wear a helmet.
Me too.
I always wore a helmet.
Not me.
But you didn't have to. So how hard was it when you had to start wearing seatbelts?
Same thing, helmets, yeah.
There's a learning curve that says, oh, before I start the car, got to put my seatbelt on.
Mm-hmm.
I remember going through driver's training, and part of the driver's training section was you put your seatbelt on, and then you turned around and you looked at every passenger and told them, put your seatbelts on. And that was driver's training.
Mm-hmm.
So I think as the younger, as people younger than us have come up, it's probably second nature. They probably wouldn't move parking places in a parking lot without putting their seatbelt on. It's second nature. It's not second nature yet with cell phones.
Bingo.
It's not second nature yet with marijuana. I know there is going to be, at some point, some type of a level that will be considered unsafe to drive with. I'm sure they're probably testing for THC or something in your system. Possibly when your THC alcohol level exceeds an amount, that will be considered impaired. But as of right now, we don't know what that level is.
Do we need legislation?
Personally, I don't think we do until numbers support it. We didn't legislate cell phones until we saw this spike, and I think that that's probably the best way to go. Don't knee-jerk something that doesn't need to be.
No truer words ever spoken. Don't knee-jerk something that don't be knee-jerking. Or something. Don't. Okay. All right. Well, that'll bring us to the conclusion of another grueling 12-minute episode. I'm exhausted, yeah. This has been Men Are So Smart. You'll find all the links below to our channel, to our Facebook page, to our Twitter. We have so much stuff down there. Email, or links to the topics, whatever you might like to find. And what's that? Ronnie, what is that?
That looks like a subscribe button.
Yeah, you see that over my shoulder right there? You should click on that and subscribe to our show. Nothing would make us happier.
No.
Except pizza. And I think pizza's going to be in our next episode. And wait till you hear what kind of pizza I'm talking about. That's the next episode of Men Are So Smart. See you next time.